Hey guys, back with another Echoing Thoughts podcast here in episode number 21. And this podcast is going to be all about May update. I was going to say April, but it's already May. Excited for this one. This one is, my previous podcast, I talked about my predictions for May and June updates, and I was hoping for three things: Legion, revamp, check, DPS tracker. They didn't give it this one, but expecting it for that next one. Jot down. And the third one was the IED, ignore enemy defense, to viskills. That's something that they had in Korean MapleStory Mobile, and it just feels like that was what was expected right before V3, and that's been consistent with Korean MapleStory. So excited that that one came into fruition, as well as the Legion change. I'm excited for just to break it down, give my thoughts and takeaways on this update. But it's just funny. I have to go kind of start from the beginning a week ago, right? When they first gave the teaser, and they've been doing this consistently Nexon with these updates, right? The first thing that they kind of tease is something small, or they try to make it as their big update. This one was the burning event from level 140 to 200. And then the next thing they dropped was Legion revamp, right? Check. That feels nice. That's something you're excited for. And a lot of people were happy if they just had that, right? That's free buffs across the board. It kind of just benefits those players that really emphasized Legion for a long time, that were way above the threshold. They were due, right? And so a lot of people were happy with that. I was excited to kind of build my Legion army. I was way behind. My Legion is like 4,800, right? So I have a long way to go with that, but I was excited to do that, right? Started building alts and things like that. And then they have the Maple TV YouTube video, the preview, right? They talk about kind of the events with the burning event with the level 140. They kind of talked about powders, I think, as well, and the Legion. And then that was it. And then the last thing they drop is, I think it was this weekend, was the rebalance, right? Just rebalance for all classes. It said, that's all it said on a teaser. And it's funny, like they've just been consistent with this the past few rebalances with just updates in general, where the first thing that they talk about isn't necessarily the biggest part of the update. I remember the last rebalance was 20 classes are getting rebalanced. That wasn't even like I don't even think that was one of the first things, but it was like 20 classes getting rebalanced only, right? And then they drop in, that's when the crit rate changes came in, right? The uncapped crit rate, the meta completely changed, and that was the fair trade change as well. And these were just like one-liners, right? Something they don't even promote or anything like that. And those are usually the biggest parts of the patch. So I think one of the things that we can learn is that Nexon is sort of putting in these little, like, small changes, these small little footnotes that they're trying to, they're not promoting, but are sort of create the biggest impact in the update entirely. So, and this one is not the ignore enemy defense. It's actually the ADI change, right? It's just a one-liner, right? And it's kind of changes the meta again, right? And we'll talk about that later. But it's just funny how their process of kind of showcasing the patch has changed this year, where they kind of give teasers here and there, and the biggest update is sometimes not even talked about until you read it in the patch notes. So definitely look out for that in future patches. You get excited, but also know that there's a lot more that could be kind of hidden under the rug that they're trying to keep for patch notes for you to get excited. And then it's just funny, as the day of the patch notes today comes out, right? Just like any other rebalance, any other update, feedback section just goes crazy. And I personally mute it. I've done it for a while. It's really good for my mental health, especially when updates come. The last thing I want to do is check out feedback, just because it's just either people are trolling, right? They're clowning. They're just making made up posts. They're just straight up negative. Rarely, maybe like 10%, 5% of the time, it's actually like a good job, Nexon. Love this update. Like, thank you for this. Thank you for that. It's always like complaining, right? People are complaining. People are rage quitting. People are blaming Nexon, things like that. It's just full of negative energy, right? And it's just funny how, once again, this one, right, didn't disappoint. This one didn't disappoint. People were just blowing up about the ADI changes, the ignore enemy defense changes, the fact that some classes didn't even get buffed. Apparently, everyone loves the Pathfinder all of a sudden, and everyone's a Pathfinder main and just wants Pathfinders to get buffed. I thought that was funny, just because one of my good friends that carries us in Lotus is a Pathfinder, and he was just like not expecting a buff for Pathfinders, and I was everyone was like wanted buffs or pathfinders all of a sudden. So it was just, we had a good laugh about it. But I will go through this, but it's just funny, the feedback section. And I think for me, one of the things that I just always learn about feedback section or patch notes is that we have this one thought in our mind about what it's going to turn into. We do our calculations. We do like, this is how many lines we got, benefit here, this and that. And when the game actually comes out, it's not what we expected at all. And in this rebalance is no different, right? The ADI changes. Everyone thought it was going to be a nerf for some of these top tier classes. And, you know, kind of bring down the peak numbers that some classes were hitting. Mercedes, you know, DBs, blasters, paladins are going to get nerfs, and it may be to their burst, but it's not as much as people thought, right? Like, we'll talk about it more, but it just feels like people always overreact to patch notes, and we just have to wait for the game to come out. Nexon, I have to give them credit, right? I don't think people give them enough credit, but these two last rebalances, the crit rate meta change, and this one is really trending in the right direction. I'll talk about that later, about kind of my biggest takeaways and what I think they're trying to do. But let's just get into this. That was a long intro. Let's just get into this patch notes right here. I'll start off by Legion, huge, right? Like I mentioned, people are far exceeding or gaining huge passive buffs just straight off the bat. The grid expands. You can build more blocks. These free options as well as new. So like you get all these EXP just for unlocking this, right? This has nothing to do with your grid at all. This is just straight from ranking. So that's nice. Definitely a good way to get free passive, especially for free-to-play players, to get free passive stats. Even for EXP, it's nice. This equipment leveling balance is, hey, 20% increase here and there. I'll take it, right? No one's going to complain about this. This is awesome. Kind of just help the economy and help people kind of maximize their powers and things like that. It did kind of one of the main emphasis was here, this ancient level where level 30 ancients were maxing out chaos level 50s with just one item. And they obviously addressed that. EXP decreased for above level 18. So kind of one downside to this, but overall, I'll take it. 20% powders, saves mezzos, all of it overall. Can't complain, right? I saw some people upset about this. I don't know how. Like Hard Hilla, Chaos Volneon. This is just for like free to play players that are trying to do, their for alts or whatever, or lower tier players that are just trying to get their commander box, their 20p, so they can get chaos shards. That's what my thought process on it. And just allows people to clear hard Magnus even more. I have no problem with it. I think it's great. Kind of just allows people to start building their commander sets, right? Even with less gear than you previously required. Get those 20 shards for the chaos fodder, chaos shards. 20 clears a week for 7 shards. Feels nice. People are going to start making chaos fodders and having those attempts build up that economy. That's nice. This one is actually underrated, and this is the stuns, right? So overall, basically what it's saying is cooldowns are the same. 60 seconds is what it is the same. The cooldowns haven't changed for any of these skills. Sorry. So Paladin Smite Shield, for example, 5 seconds used to be stunned. Now it's 10 seconds. It's actually a long time. I tested it out. It feels really, really long. I think it may even skip multiple skills. Not for sure about that, but when I did Hard Magnus, I feel like it skipped 2 skills, which is something you just have to adjust to, right? It may apply to other bosses as well. But the big change is now, even though the cooldown hasn't changed for Paladin Shield, with Smite Shield, 60 seconds, it hasn't changed. But now the reapplication time is from 60 seconds to 90 seconds. So there's going to be a time period, say in Arc, for example, where you can't stun every single DR. So it's just a little bit of mechanics, something you have to get used to. We'll be fine. There's a little icon on the boss that's going to show you when that reapplication cooldown is done. It's really hard to see, but it's there. Something we'll just have to adjust to. And in Lotus, for example, or maybe even, you have to jump on the platform, do mechanics, things like that, just little things. But it's something just to keep in mind, right? That's kind of in here that maybe people missed. And then rebalance. So this is rebalance class changes. Paladin's obviously number first, the best class. Haven't got any changes. This Synchro one affects phantoms. So we'll get into that a little bit later, what they're kind of trying to do with phantoms. Then they just moved all of this to other skills, Pally specific skills. So basically this was nothing affecting Paladin. Like it's totally fine. We're not getting any buffs, nerfs, whatever it is. That's nice. Heroes. This one feels pretty good, right? Invincibility for 2 seconds is kind of the main thing. Just feels like a little bit longer. I think the skill delay reduced by 55% is also really nice for training, for bossing, maybe involved in the rotation now, but also the utility of having that iframe. Great, right? That's a great skill. And so the final damage was moved over from World Reaver to Burning Soul. That's all it was there. Night Lord decrease 60 seconds to 5 seconds. I think it just allowed for them to move it if bosses move, allows you to reapply it, things like that. Bishops, pretty good. I think these are such small changes, but actually really important. The RI change 1.5 to 0.5 seconds feels nice, right? Get rid of the cooldown altogether would be nice, but 0.5 seconds feels like nothing. Skill delay reduced by 10 seconds. That's just like adding, 10% more lines, right? Feels nice. And it just back to what I feel like that's what Angel Ray used to feel like, a little bit more, little quicker. So it just allows you kind of more time to react or press other skills, and there's that skill delay. Feels nice. And just feels like, they're trying to build up bishops and support classes. I'm going to talk about later about how it just feels like they're trying to rebalance the game where there's no distinction between DPS classes and support classes, right? You'll see it. Obviously bishops still have benediction, shell, res, but it feels like the fact that they didn't give you dispel, you can't dispel while you're in RI, just feels like they're really trying to emphasize DPS, right? Just full on DPS, being less support, less dispels, things like that, and just allowing you to be more of a DPSer. And then we'll talk about that more with the other quote unquote support classes, but it feels like that is the route they're trying to take, so that it is, again, minimizes that necessity to have a bishop, right? Allows for other classes to just have an opportunity to do endgame bossing and not having to require these specific classes like phantoms, like pallies, like bishops in every single bossing fight. Because that's kind of what I see in Korean Maple Story. People were showing me in Discord that Korean Maple Story, Damien, they don't even have a pally, they don't even have a bishop. So maybe they're trying to trend. Our game is trying to trend in that direction as well. Just all about who has the best gear, who has the best skill cap, will be clearing content and doing the best. So that's something to look forward to. Maybe what they're trying to do with these rebalances. Yeah, Ice Lightning Mages, another one line, I think. Not too sure about this. Lightning Orb, hit count increased higher, cooldown increased. I'll be curious to see how that translates. Kind of hard for us to say what that's going to do. Feels just like more burst, right? Overall, just use it at more specific times, things like that. It's going to give me more benefit. Fire Poison Mage, Meteor Shower, 1 additional hit count. Bowmasters, duration decreased, cooldown decreased. Pretty interesting. I'm not too familiar with Bowmasters, but this feels like a buff. But knowing Bowmasters, they may think it's a nerf. And then Arrow Platter, cooldown 10 seconds to 1 second, kind of like what Night Lord's got, Frailty Curse, where it just allows you to summon skill delay increase by 166%. Wow. So it's going to take a little bit longer to put the platters down, but it's going to be kind of just allow you more flexibility if the boss moves or you change phases, like in Lotus or Damien. It just allows you to get that platter back up quicker. Marksman, split shot, buff duration 30 seconds, hit count increase from 6 to 7. That feels nice. See how our marksman does in Lotus. He's already doing pretty good damage. Perfect shot as well. Not too familiar with this. Max shot hit count increase from 16 to 240. What? Invincibility decrease from 5 to 3 seconds. So cooldown decrease from 90 seconds to 45 seconds. So cooldown further reduced by 2.5 seconds every 5 seconds, reduced from, That seems pretty nice. Shorter cooldown, right? Higher burst. Invincibility increased from 15 to 3 seconds. Feels like it just allows for more flexibility again, kind of like um, use it when you need it. Sometimes that can save you compared to a 50 seconds iframe. So more utility there with that skill. Seems pretty sweet. I'm interested to see how that applies to marksman. Arrow illusion, hit count reduced. So just wider range, less hit count, more damage. To address this while nerfing efficiency, we're improving other marksman skill to provide more flexibility. So however, our intentions are not to lower the efficiency of arrow illusion hunting. In order to compensate for this, the left right target range of skill damage has been increased. So maybe better for mobbing. They buffed other skills, so they're not so reliant on arrow illusion. We'll see how that works out. But I like that they kind of have a description here. It had a low DPS efficiency against certain boss patterns due to the nature of skills fixed type summon. So less reliant on this skill doing damage because the boss can move here and there and just allows you to have more damage from other skills. Great description. I like that. Thought process, see how it applies. We'll just see how it applies to the actual gameplay. Corsair, initially set too high. We lower the frequency of majestic presence. Okay. Hit count went insanely high. Repetition interval reduced before. So I like this. 300 times attacks during 3.6 seconds. Geez, after 750 attacks during less time. Feels insane. And summon have been improved so that a huge burst of damage could be done short amount of time. So they're trying to make it a little bit more bursty, lower the frequency of majestic presence. Not sure what that is, but seems like that's kind of what they're going for, right? They talk about more lines, less time. Pretty insane. Doubles hit count, ugly bomb removed. Activation chance increased from 10 to, so I sort of like this where it seems like this is something they're trending towards too. I'll talk about it later, but activation chance, less RNG and more 100% activation, right? That feels nice. I think they're trying to build more consistent damage, less RNG and DPS. Seems like a trend. I like that. Reactivation cooldown, buff duration decrease, but reactivation decrease. Feels like Corsair is pretty nice. These are pretty good buffs. Hit counts are reduced. Duration increased by 30 seconds. So these are just free. Looks like these are just passive attacks that are just going to do more damage over time. Geez, that's a lot of skills that got readjusted. They made a big adjustment to Corsairs. Curious to see how that plays out. But I think Corsairs are pretty good. Pretty good. Buccaneers. Talk to a Buccaneer main. Feels like a good buff. Basically kind of same thought process where they're more of a consistent damage dealing class where now they're having more burst, right? Lord of the Deep, lightning form, cooldowns are decreased, but buff durations decreased, but they're getting more hit counts, more, faster attacks, right? So duration can be decreased. So lightning form is going to be shorter, but stronger, right? Lord of the Deep, cooldown increase from 5 to 60 seconds. So it became stronger. Again, burstier, right? I think it was just not working with their playstyle where they were just consistently doing damage unlimited, right? Buff duration was unlimited, but there was hit count was so low, right? So now they have a peak, right? They can do more. This is all passive line, so it feels really nice where they're just doing more damage, quicker, burstier, and that allows for more skill cap, utility, whatever it is. It feels nice, right? It feels like it allows for them to peak, have a little bit higher peaks and maybe guild content, and also in bossing as well. And then this one's the big one, Battleship, right? So it's basically restructured. This is just implying this is for Phantoms again, like Synchro restructured for Phantoms. This is the same. Basically, they don't want Phantoms to be benefiting DPS based off of stolen skills. And we'll see it more in the Phantom rebalances, but it feels like they're just changing the gameplay completely. Cannoneers improved option to grant invincibility for a short period of time, immediate skill class. So invincibility, 2 seconds. I like that, right? I think one of the things I talked about constantly, the biggest difference isn't a lot of the times damage. It's survivability, iframes, Phantoms. DBs, Pallies, Nightwalkers, Dual Blades, Blasters, all the top DPS have iframes of some sort, allows them to skill cap, to survive, to do more damage. A lot of these classes are starting to get little mini ones, right? Heroes got with World Reaver, 2 seconds, a little bit longer. This one's getting 2 seconds, a little bit longer. Aran's in previous rebalance got iframes. I like it. Trending in the right direction. Allow for survivability, allow for skill cap, allow for players to use their utility to survive, to do more uptime, to not die, to help their teams, to be in endgame situations, and kind of have an answer to boss mechanics. Feels nice. I like it. I like it. I hope they continue to trend in this direction. Even 2 seconds here and there feels like a game changer. It feels really, really nice, and kind of bridges that gap between cooldowns, between iframes, between the classes with the best iframes and classes that don't have any at all. So Aran, interested to see how this changes. Aran's, again, more skills, things are getting removed. All these passives are getting removed, but it looks like cooldowns decreased, buff duration decreased. They say this is an improvement. Decreasing cooldown, right? More buff duration is shorter, but it just allows for more reactivation. It's going to trigger more. Hopefully their intention is to build more burst in kind of short windows. So we'll see how that plays out, but that seems like what they're remove the part where Beyond Blade triggers Final Blow so that just Beyond Blade could be used on its own, okay? So it looks like they just got final damage here and here. They added a new hyper skill, it looks like. So final damage became a passive. So they just move things around again, kind of similar to what Paladins got, things like that. So interested to see how that affects Iran's. Just slight gameplay changes again, allows for just, different play style. And Phantoms, one of the biggest changers, only 4 skills, but a lot, right? So basically what they said here is what I mentioned before. Stolen skills would be more efficient when it would be used by originating job, which limited our ability to rebalance other classes with those skills. So like they said, like previously, Phantoms were not getting rebalanced, but the fact that Bowmasters were getting rebalanced, Night Lords were getting rebalanced with their showdown, Buccaneers with their battleship were getting all these changes. Pallies were getting Synchro passive buffs. Phantoms were getting these these buffs indirectly, even though their class was not getting touched. So clearly they put an emphasis on this, taking away kind of the importance of relying on stolen skills, right? Which was a huge part of the DPS kit. Battleship was 24 lines a second. That's insane, right? So they removed that completely from 24 to 0 or 26, I think. Something like that, but a ton of lines per second. And now they're just adding it on to actual Phantom skills. Melee, 7 to 10 seconds, 7 to 10 lines. That's like adding 10 lines. I think they said it's like 10 lines per second. That's a lot of lines. So that's gonna be a big boost there. Cooldown, Tempest, huge skill. Like I like this. They're doing this again. More attacks in less duration. This allows them, it's not only more attacks and less duration, but it just allows for you to get melee attacks in. In this 1.8 seconds difference right here, you can get more melee attacks in, right? Or you can use luck of the draw. It just allows you, or maybe you can press synchro, right? You can do other things. You just are free from that, that Tempest skill, which is a hold down skill. And it just allows you time to do other things to, depending on the situation. Luck of the draw, hit count 2 to 3. That's similar to melee. That's one skill line, but that's a lot of fast lines over the time of the skill. So Phantoms, all they're this is just what a rebalance is, right? They're getting sort of a big makeover. You can tell, again, like I mentioned, for bishops, they are turning these classes into less support classes, and more just DPS classes, where they're trying to eliminate that difference between like a Phantom that is full DPS and a Phantom that used to use time leap or had to take res, right? Their DPS dropped off so much once they started using time leap. They had to switch to stolen skills. And now, even if you take time leap from the get-go, right, you're not going to have to, 1, switch back and forth during the fight, loses up time, and 2, you're not going to have that huge drop off, right? You're going to be consistent across the board. You're still going to have that support skill if you end up taking time leap or taking res, and it's just not going to have such a big impact on your DPS, because a lot of your DPS, your damage is coming from your main skills. And I do think that, yes, they're losing a lot of, they're losing a lot of passive lines, right? Which people are frustrated with. But let me tell you this, I'm telling you right now, having these skills moved over to your main skills is way more beneficial. Millie, Tempest, they get affected by nodes. They have built-in physical damage to them. They have built-in ignore enemy defense to them as well. So it's not just the fact that you may lose these passive lines, these small lines that built a lot of your damage, but you're getting more. Like Millie, if your cap is 20 mil, you're getting 60 mil more, right? Just based off of this. And then it just the ignore enemy defense is going to benefit your covert, your Mulong. It's going to help benefit your bossing, and it's just something that you do not get. You would not get that benefits of that ignore enemy defense from those passive lines from Battleship. I don't think, right? I could be wrong, but I think that's the case. Or it's just not going to be as impactful because they just aren't hitting as hard, right? They're smaller lines. So again, I think this is, if you want to get rebalanced, sometimes it just get better. It's better to have your main lines getting your main skills getting the added lines, because of all the things that are built into these skills, right? Like Millie, like if Blast for Paladins, their main skill gets buffed, if we get more lines to that, it's not just that, but you also get final damage buff from hypers, you get crit damage buff from the hyper skills, you get the physical damage from the node, you get extra final damage. It's all of these things that are built into the skill that makes it so much more beneficial and impactful on your damage. So I definitely think I just saw a few things already. Phantom's covert scores shot up, right? Not surprised there. Probably has a little bit to do with this, but it also probably has a little bit to do with the ignore enemy defense changes as well. So excited to kind of see how it all plays out in bossing things. But I think Phantom's definitely got a win, and it's going to show in their numbers, whether you're full DPS or you're still using time leap, being a support Phantom, quote unquote support Phantom, and still doing really good damage, not losing that, not having that drop off. So then Evans, lack of MP in boss battles. We added MP recovery to Dragons. Oh, interesting. 1%. That's sweet. And then return cooldown decrease from 3 to 0.5 seconds. That's nice. I like that. Luminous has a high DPS against boss during equilibrium, but structurally difficult to enter equilibrium status to feel like Dark Gauge. Improvements were made, so it is also filled just by using skills in air without hitting any monsters. Okay. Not really too sure about this. Improves so that will charge when casting without a target. So it basically allows you to charge it up. So, kind of, I guess, preemptively, it seems like, even if you're not attacking, see how that goes. MP recovery, kind of adding that. Looks like 10% crit damage, 20% magic damage. Oh, I see. They just moved it over. They removed it here. Okay, so it just feels like they're trying to I see. Okay. Doesn't feel like a lot. Now that I look at it, does not feel like a lot. Basically they just changed this equilibrium thing. I mean, Lumis want a buff. Lumis are frustrated. I get it. I think Lumis are pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. But hey, to each their own. I think Lumi mains have a right to be upset if they feel like they just haven't had a rebalance in a while. This feels just like I don't know. Just feels ho-hum. But I'm curious to see how that plays into effect, how Lumis kind of use that to min-max their skills. Xenons. Omega Blaster, 1 line. Reactivation cooldown for this force field. Oh, so allows just for, like they said right here, allows for skill location adjustments. I like that kind of big emphasis here. And then skill delay reduced for this one. And it just feels Xenon's little bit things here and there. Feels nice. Now for battle mages, it looks like, battle mages have been getting good buffs recently. I think they're just underrepresented. I hope to see battle mage and Lotus and Arc and Gold Dungeon kind of test out their limits, invest in the class, it still feels like change from active to buff skill. I see. Yeah. So I still like finishing blow that they increased the range even more. Um, more lines of Dark Genesis. The party shield feels like they're just trying to, it's like one last ditch effort to make this thing work. They revamped it last time. They increased the duration again this time. Curious to see what they do with it moving forward, if it's viable or if they completely revamp it again. But it doesn't feel like it's very impactful in endgame bossing, but maybe I'm wrong. It's just not that valuable, and they're allocating hyper skills to it. Curious to see Wild Hunters, um, passive free physical damage instead of physical attack. That feels nice. um Feline Berserk decreased from 1800, cooldown increased, buff duration 3 seconds, cooldown added into invincibility. So again, nice little invincibility, kind of revamped the skill, looks like all together. Cooldown was increased and its buff duration was decreased. However, while backed up, you be granted invincibility, which allows you to defend against range attack. Pretty, like, that's nice, right? It gives, I think archers, archers are one of the squishiest classes in the game, classes. So definitely a 3 second iframe doesn't feel huge on a 90-second cooldown, but they also have their V2 skill. That's another iframe. Two iframes, long duration, brings some utility, right? It just allows for something. Curious to see. I always like that. Talked about it. Still fan of it. Even short duration iframes have value. Curious to see if they add that to classes slowly moving forward. Oh, I see. So they didn't really get the physical damage passive. It just was applied. I see. Okay. Changes the passive, changes the passive. Okay. So not much there, kind of just adding the iframe. That's pretty sweet. Mechanic, reorganized. Lower the frequency of summon skills, improve so that a huge burst of damage could be dealt in a short amount of time. So similar to Corsairs, doing more damage, less amount of time. Doomsday, hit count, missile hit count, huge buffs. Skill delay reduced, increase. So these feel like nice buffs. Another invincibility effect. Trend, something we should monitor. Your class may get this in the future if you're not one of these classes. Something like, talk about it. Look, even in Demon Slayers, they're going to get invincibility as well. Talked about it, right? Feels nice to be heard. Feels nice for these classes to get something, right? Just something. That's nice to see. Demon Slayer reinforce looks like it just was changed a little bit. Hyper skills were changed so that its final damage is increased 100% of the time versus kind of something you have to constantly repeat. Use Demon Lash like it says to keep the buff going. iFrame Ravenstorm. Second time's a charm, I guess, for this skill. Demon Slayer players getting this iframe, added invincibility, 30-second cooldown. It's like a 1 second skill. Curious to see how that plays out. It's nice utility, right? I think Demon Slayers always were very strong DPS wise. Just the deciding factor between other warriors and other DPS classes was just the survivability. Hopefully this helps them. And Demon Impact 2 extra lines. Jeez, that Demon Slayers are going to be really good. If their Ravenstorm is solid, intended, it's playable. It works as intended. I think it's going to be Demon Slayers are going to be real nice. Demon Impact 2 extra lines. That's 4 extra lines with Blue Blood. Yeah, they're not going to have much drop off in DPS at all, and their peaks are already pretty high peaks. The Demon Avengers, like if you're complaining Pathfinder's not getting anything, Demon Avengers feels like this just get like, if I were a Pathfinder or Demon Avenger, like Pathfinder's getting no buffs at all, feels okay, right? They didn't feel like they needed to get buffed. A lot of the strongest classes didn't get any buffs. Demon Avengers, they gave them a buff and totally disregarded their main skill again. Thousand Swords, I don't even know if maybe it is a bossing skill now, right? Skill delay quicker, maybe it'll be into the rotation, but it just feels like There's just so many avenues they could have went, decided just one. Good enough. They don't even have like a skill description. Other classes like get some sort of notes about them, why they did it, like mechanics. Like they said, they have a little write up about why they do it. Demon Avengers, nah, nothing. So we'll see how that plays out. If I was a Demon Avenger, I'd be pretty frustrated. Hope that they get kind of some sort of recognition soon. Yeah, Kaiser's honestly one of my winners. They got a lot of buffs. Overall, hit count, blade fall, 10 extra lines, Dragon Link. It was inconvenient to repeatedly use Dragon Slash in order to receive the Dragon Link buff. So you can, when you attack, allowing you to easily maintain the damage increase. Nice. Cooldown, buff duration, nice. Blade fall, 10 extra, dealing instant damage. Previously, it was continuous damage. Now it's instant. I like that. Nova Guardian, extra lines, free lines, V1 skill. That's, we'll talk about Kaisers more. So wing beat, like max attack count, but it's going to, repetition is going to hit more frequently. Kaisers, Glory of Kaisers is coming back. You'll see more about their V skills, but this Nova Guardian feels really nice. Angelic Busters, lines across the board, feels good, something, right? If I was Angelic Buster, I wouldn't complain about more lines overall, right? One line every rebalance, 2 lines here and there. Slowly kind of bringing it up, Arc, not too sure about this class. Skills have been removed. Interesting that it's already skills already being removed. These are just passive skills, it looks like. Nothing to the actual gameplay. Arc's gonna be still pretty nice. Kinesis, dang, a lot of lines. 8, 2 lines here, 4 lines there. Things got removed. Final damage increase. A lot of lines are getting changed. Final damage increase here. Hit count, 20% crit damage. Kinesis, show out. Let's get it. Kinesis mains, let's see what you guys got. I think that they look like they've been getting good buffs the last 2 rebalances. So that's it for the class buffs. Obviously, a lot of the top tier classes didn't get buffs or any changes consistent with what they did before. I'm all about it. But this is sort of the big change that affects everyone, right? This is sort of what, if you want to consider this as all class rebalance, this is it, right? And this is everything. And like I talked about it previously, they seem to be going away from RNG based, right? Like activation procs and things like that, going just 100% for a lot of classes moving forward. This is no different for the hyperstat, right? Before it was at max level, 15% chance or 20%, 15% chance of activation, 150% skill damage, no reactivation cooldown. Now it's straight extra hit counts, right? And I like this, right? It just allows for more consistency across the board, right? One of the biggest difference makers in the top DPS was just ADI lines, right? Think about like dual blades. They were saying their V1 skill had 1,000 plus lines in 5 seconds or whatever. It might be a 0. I think it's the V skill, but that's on average almost 200 lines of ADI lines in a 5-second interval. Absurd. Some classes don't even get that an entire minute, right? That's the difference, right? So it just feels like, they're just trying to change the emphasis. It seems trying to make it more consistent over less burst heavy, right? That's kind of those things that they seem to be focusing on, less burst heavy upfront, but more consistently over time. So a lot of people think that this was a nerf, right? We'll just get into it. I think it's a buff across the board, right? Like I mentioned, dual blades, Mercedes, classes with clones that were able to proc a lot of ADI lines may get affected in their upfront damage, right? Their burst damage. Guild content may get skewed, may go down, may be the same. But in the long game, longer bosses, when your cooldowns are down, for example, paladins, right? Previously, ADI lines, so they talked about it here, clone and additional damage effects are not applied. So previously, and they're not activated for clone attacks. So this is designed towards classes that have clones, that their clones proc ADI lines. They got eliminated that, right? Clones, it also says that you can't clone ADI lines, right? This is what they're talking about here. So basically Echo previously to this patch, every ADI line, one line was 2 lines because Echo cloned it, right? So we got a huge, Paladins got a huge burst up front during Echo half the fight where ADI lines were essential, right? ADI lines were a huge chunk of damage. And we benefited more than a majority of classes, and that's why Paladins are so very strong, right? Especially their burst. Now they take that away, right? You can't, everyone's just getting straight up at max hyperstat, 12 lines every 1.5 seconds. Comes out to about 480 lines a minute across the board. No one's getting more, no one's getting less. It's just consistent, right? No activation chance, no RNG, just consistent, right? And I think that again is a buff overall for the longevity, for just damage across the board. It may buff certain classes more than others. Kind of those classes that weren't as bursty, but I think like for Paladin, for example, we were so peaks and valleys based, right? When our cooldowns are up, we did a ton of damage. When our cooldowns are down, we hit like a wet noodle. This allows it kind of to even it out, right? Our peaks might not be as high, but our lows aren't as low. And for consistent damage dealing classes, say like a Dark Knight, a Pathfinder, for example, there just raises their ceiling, just raises that floor a little bit, right? So you're just doing more damage across the board consistently. I haven't seen any. It's still early, right? I don't want to kind of say I know everything, right? People are still testing, but first glance, first take, it's a buff across the board. Guild dungeon, bossing, even. It's just how you're doing your damage, right? It's not, some classes aren't going to be so burst heavy, but make up for it, like I mentioned. So I'm interested to see. It just feels like overall classes are getting more balanced. The gaps are shrinking, guys. And this is what people wanted all along, right? You just want the ability to play your class, progress it, and see results, right? You don't want to get beat out by classes that just, are OP, right? Have way less gear than you, way less stats. You want to kind of see fruits of your labor, right? Your ability, your investment into your class translate into DPS. So this is a step in the right direction. I'm really happy and excited for this and see how it plays out. But I think it's a benefit for everyone, maybe just more for some certain classes than others. And then this one is what we predicted. Defense ignored defense across the board for viskills, right? So you can kind of look through it. I'm sure you already seen it for your classes. Kind of ones that stick out to me. Dark Knights, Spirit Darkness, 9%. That's nice, right? Like Dark Knights, really nice, solid. Demon Slayer, solid. Demon Avengers. I don't know any class that's really complaining about this, right? Like Blade Tempest, 3% feels really good. Even Blades of Destiny, 12%. That's on a 10-second cooldown. I'm pretty sure that's going to be really strong. Basically, the way I look at norming defense is just you're just doing straight up more percent damage. Your cap's going to go up a little higher. You're going to do a little more damage. It just feels free damage, right? And it just depends on if they're kind of shorter skill, they're activation skills that you use, but have shorter cooldowns, duration-based skills, whatever it is. I'm going to look at kind of ones that stuck out to me is, let's see. Evans, 15, 12%, 15%, 4 skills got ignoring the defense. That stands out, right? Not too many classes got 4 skills. Dang, didn't notice that. 4 skills, 15%, 12%. Maybe they're not as strong as I think, but that feels really, really good. 4 skills, all 4 of your skills. Got some ignoring enemy defense. Jeez. Kaisers, I think, stood out for me. Nova Guardians. This is 12%. This is a 2-minute cooldown. This is a 2-minute duration on 3-minute cooldown. So 2/3 of the fight, they're going to have these passive damage, 12% ignoring enemy defense. That feels nice. Paladins, have to talk about it. Hammers of Righteous, going to be really good. Just straight up 9%. It's up half the fight. It's good burst damage. If you're not a Paladin, you got to max the skill. Definitely over Weapon Aura. Phantoms, Ace in the Hole. I don't know, man. These are just good. Like a lot of these are good. Like I can't complain about it. I think Mercedes, people see these numbers. These aren't skills that they actually use in a rotation. So it's not as impactful. Kind of maybe one of the classes that don't get as big of a buff or anything at all. Mercedes is so good. Night Lord's Shuriken, Nightwalker's 12%. This is another one, 12% on a 2-minute cooldown. Passive damage. That's pretty good. That should show up. That should show up in damage. I like Angel Balance, duration-based skill again. Shadowers. I mean, I can just go down this list. This is, I mean, everyone should be happy. Like Pathfinders. People complain about Pathfinders not getting burst, not getting a buff. If they don't consider this a buff, I don't know. 15% to Raven Tempest. That's their tornado. That's a big skill. Duration-based cooldown. That's a good amount of damage. Good amount of burst. Nova Blast. Might have to max it now. It's not just an iframe. We'll see. Add it into the rotation. See what's up. That might be bigger than people think, right? Weapon Aura, 6%. We'll take it. Warriors across the board. That's nice. Yeah. Can't complain. I don't think anyone can complain about this. I think people underrate this, how good this is. If you use it properly, if you use your skills properly, maybe your rotation has to change. Maybe you have to manually press these skills to maximize it. It's nice. It should. I mean, Asia teams might be clearing Damien with this, right? Once they kind of get used to it, get used to phase 2, the rotation, the skill rotation. This might be, people might be clearing before V3, which is because of this buff. I think it's very impactful. Covert scores, my covert score went up 1,000 points. 1,000 points. Yeah. Just with this one skill. This is Paladins did not get any other buff except for this. Righteous Hammers, 9%. Went up a ton. Curious to see. I know Phantoms got really good, kind of got improvements. It just feels like it's better than people think, guys. It's if you don't consider these buffs, I don't know what to tell you. These are buffs, good buffs, big buffs. And it's only going to show on your DPS meters. It's all passive. It's just, you don't have to change anything either. It just shows up. I like it. I love it. You're going to see it too. It's nice. Burning Event. Honestly, I'm not going to talk about this. Excited, 140 to 200, but Blooming Draw. This one's interesting. Extreme buff package. 30 days. This one's like $20, I think. I saw 5 days, 30% EXP buff. Test it out. Might be nice. Might be nice. For those EXP people who are trying to catch up on levels, things like that. Some changes. I don't know. I'm not going to go through this. This was a already long podcast. I want to just finish with, maybe there's some bugs here. No, I don't think so. I just want to finish kind of my takeaways, right? That was a lot of information, a lot of rebalances. Kind of the main thing was my thought process on what Nexon was trying to do, right? It kind of revolves around them just trying to, like, a rebalances, right? All we want is our class. Like, we don't necessarily want to have the biggest buff in the class, right? We just want to say in the end that we're getting buffed, that our damage is translating to our gear and our skill cap, right? Previously, pre-patch, before the crit res meta change back in March, and this one in May, the changes, I think it was May or April or February, but either way, the passive rebalances really emphasized evening the playing field, right? Crit res became obsolete in all content. Feels nice, right? Fair trade kind of is that equalizer. And then this one, ADI, was a huge difference maker in classes, their burst, their top heavy burst. And it just felt like previously to this patch, it was not about what your cap was, what your stats were, how your skill as a player. It was more about the questions people were asking was, what class do you play, right? And honestly, how long was the time of the fight, right? Like, for example, like an arc or other factors, right? Like, for example, an arc, like 60-second fights, 90-second fights, 2-minute fights, favored certain classes that had duration-based cooldowns, had duration-based burst, where classes that had more consistent damage didn't have that top end damage, were just never able to catch up, which is in that 2 to 3 minute time of the fight where people's cooldowns are down, right? It allowed them to catch up, right? So, for example, Paladins versus a Shade, for example, or a Shadower, where they're more consistent damage dealing classes, Paladins would peak, would smash them in the first 90 seconds of a fight. Then the Shades and Shadowers would catch up, right? The next 90 seconds, right? So the 3-minute increments, it may be even, or Paladins may be slightly higher. A lot of other factors. But now, and so like the time in the fight, right? Paladins, if a 6-minute Lotus fight versus a 7:30-minute fight, we actually favored a longer fight. A fight that was 700 minutes and 30 seconds long would actually benefit Paladins, where a 6-minute fight may actually benefit a Shadow or a Shade. And I think they're trying to eliminate that, right? It shouldn't be about how long the fight is, things like that. They're trying to balance it where no matter what the fight is, no matter what class you are, you can compete if you have the right gear and you have the right skill, right? You're maximizing your class, because at the end of the day, people have the gear, but they don't have the skill. They don't know how to play their class, and they complain, right? That's not who we're talking about, right? We're talking about people that know how to play their class, know how the boss mechanics, and they know, and they have the gear to back it up. That is a difference, right? That's where people really should shine, no matter what class they play. And that's what they're trying to get to, right? That's all they ask. And so I think this rebalance did that in some ways, right? I mentioned they eliminated activation chances, right? They eliminated that 10% ADI for some classes went from 10% to 100%. ADI went from 15% to 100%, right? Build consistency across the board so that, burst may come down for those burst heavy classes. And it just kind of raises the floor of consistent damage dealing classes, right? And bridges the gap, right? Closes the gap. Another thing that they tried to do was, it felt like they were just trying to eliminate support classes, right? I think that's another factor, right? It just seems like they want every class to be on equal playing field, right? So allowing every class to have the ability to be a part of an endgame fight, right? You don't have to have a Bishop, Shade, Pally, Phantom if you don't need to, right? I think that's what they're trying to get around, right? And especially in Lotus and Damien, it feels like you could get away with not having a Bishop, right? Now it helps to have Benediction, Shell, it helps to have Res, but they could get away with it, right? Because you don't need that crit Res. So now it just seems like they're trying to push towards buffing up Bishop's damage a little bit, right? Giving them, faster cast time for Angel Ray, RI, reduce cooldown, right? They're trying to bridge that gap, build Bishops up DPS wise, so at least that they're competitive, right? They're not just there for support, they can actually do damage. Phantom, same way, right? You can still take time leap if you want, but you're still not going to have that huge drop off in damage. You'll still be doing consistent damage overall. You may not shine as much. They still will, but they're just trying not to have distinguish between a DPS Phantom and a support Phantom, right? Pallies are already in that situation, right? No one considers them a support class anymore. They're a DPS class, right? They're trying to do that with the other support, quote unquote, support classes. So I feel like that's one of the ways they're trying to bridge the gap. That's one of the things it seems like they tried to emphasize. And I like that, right? I like it. I think that's good for the game, right? And I think I'm interested to see how it actually plays out, but I can at least see the thought process, right? I got to give Nexon credit. I think these rebalances really were 5-star. Were really, really good. And I'm going to talk about it in my next podcast, but it just feels like no matter what comes with an update, rebalances are always going to be king. Like, I'm just thinking about it. The past 5 months, right? We had Sia, brand new class to MapleStory Mobile. We had Arc, a really good pirate class that people are re-rolling to, right? 2 rebalances, crit res meta, and then this ADI meta change. And then they had a completely new gearing system. All great updates, 5 months, 5 for 5. Arguably the rebalances are the 2 most impactful, the 2 that people care about the most, the 2 that, are trump a new gearing system, brand new classes. Rebalance are just so important to the community, and they have to get it right. And I feel like they've been getting it right. Now, is there room to improve? Of course. Obviously, some classes, Demon Avengers, deserve a look, right? Why are they not getting buffed in the past 2 patches? Why are they not getting anything? Everyone's getting something, right? Their Demon Brother is getting consistently more lines, right, to their everything, right? They're getting an iframe. Why is Demon Avenger not getting an iframe at least? Why are Pathfinders not getting rebalanced? Curious what just the reasons why. Maybe they feel these classes are better than people think. I don't know. Maybe they just have no clue. I don't know. But it just feels like they're trending in the right direction. 2 for 2 on the rebalances, in my opinion. People are going to hate on it. I don't see how. I just don't. Like, I just don't see, like, you're going to do more damage. You got buffed. Like, maybe you didn't get buffed as much. Maybe you're a dual blade that doesn't have that peak and burst. Your damage is going to be fine. You're still going to do damage consistently across. You may just raise the floor. Your peaks may not be as high. Your floor is going to raise. It's going to balance out, right? And I think it's just good for the game, right? We have to look at the game as a whole. Sometimes people got to get more buffs than you, right? Sometimes people like deserve it more. Sometimes you have to be taking a step down so that other people can, you can bridge that gap. I think the last thing I want to talk about that I think I mentioned in the rebalance, I think is really important for rebalancing the game in general, DPS wise, is the iframes. I just went through this for the first time, looked at other classes for the first time just now with you guys, and I didn't even realize all these classes are getting mini iframes. Wild Hunters, the Corsairs, Mechanics, Arans in the previous patch, Heroes got additional iframe. A handful of classes got iframes, little things here and there. It feels like something, right? People may not think it's a big deal. I think it's a big deal. I think it's a step in the right direction. At least, Demon Slayers, right? Finally got their iframe. Sometimes that's just the difference, right? Like, you can look at Guild Dummy, Guild Dungeon, and Guild Honor Battle, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, bossing is about uptime, surviving, right? And if you can't survive, if you're dead, that's more important than, just stand, like, no boss fight, are you just standing there and DPSing, maybe besides Arc. But still, right? Like, there's mechanics to it, right? And the less you can dodge and the more uptime you can get, survivability, you dodge lasers, things like that, immune skills, use your skill cap, use your toolkit, you are maximizing your class. You are going to do more damage and you're going to survive. And I think that just having that ability to have an iframe, whether it's 2 seconds, 3 seconds, whatever it is a win. It's a win. I hope that they keep implementing this. I hope that they hear this and they allow for these classes that are underperforming, not just to give them more damage, but to give them some sort of iframe to add to their toolkit, to play their class, to adjust to the boss mechanics. I think that's the next step. I'm excited overall, right? Predictions, I got to. It's a win for everybody. I'm excited that it came through. I was worried for a second. I'm glad that the numbers are playing out as expected. I'm excited to test out, right? This next week between podcasts, I'm excited to see how other classes are doing. PRs across the board. I love PRs. I love seeing it. It's an exciting time. Rebalances are exciting time. And I think no one should be complaining about this. I don't see how anyone is. It seems like even the best classes that thought they were getting a nerf with the ADI buff are actually getting buff, doing more damage, or it's not as bad as they thought, right? And it's definitely going to, in my opinion, it's definitely going to translate really well to bossing because of the increased skill percentage. But overall, this was a long podcast, a lot to get into. I wanted to get to every class that got a rebalance, show them their love, talk about it. I think that overall, I'm excited. Paladins got no quote unquote buffs, no changes. We just got 9% ignore enemy defense for one skill. And I guess 2 weapon aura. I'm psyched. I'm excited. I can't even imagine these classes that are getting rebalance, getting iframes, getting, more skill lines, things like that, getting actual changes on top of the ignore enemy defense. I'm just excited. I hope you guys are excited too. Let me know in the comments what class you play, how you feel your class is performing, if you got a big buff or not, if you're excited or not, if you completely disagree with me. I'm just excited to hear what you guys think. Maybe I'm just a little too happy-go-lucky about it, but thank you for listening. This is a long podcast. I apologize, but there's a lot to get into. I was excited. Had a lot on my mind, but let me know your thoughts on this rebalance. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching on YouTube, wherever you get this. Don't forget to subscribe, comment below what your thoughts are. I'll see you guys next time.